Brachos Daf Mem Zayit. The Gemara opens by quoting a brisa which discusses when it is appropriate to give honor to allow a greater person to go before you. So the Gemara says you should not allow someone to go before you, even if he's greater, on the road or on a bridge, and not with dirty hands, meaning not allow him to wash mayim achronim after a meal before you. That's not something you need to be mechaber a greater person for. Then the Gemara quotes an incident that Ravan and Abaye were walking on the way. They were riding on their donkeys, and Ravan's donkey preceded Abaye's, and Ravan did not stop and say, Abaye, you can go before me. So Abaye thought that look what's happened. Ravan used to travel often to Eretz Yisrael, and he would learn from Rabbi Yochanan. He would come back and repeat to the Talmidei Chachamim the halachas that he learned from Rabbi Yochanan. So Abaye said, look, he became inflated, he became haughty because he went to Eretz Yisrael and he learned from Rabbi Yochanan. Well, what happened further was that when they reached the shul, so Ravan opened the door and he said to Abaye, the master should go in first. So Abaye said, all of a sudden I'm the master. Before I wasn't the master. He didn't let me go first before. So Ravan explained this file. He said, Rabbi Yochanan taught the following halacha. He said, you do not honor people to go first, except to enter through a doorway that has a mezuzah. So Gemara says it has a mezuzah, but the door of a shul and a beis medrash aren't chayiv in mezuzah. So you don't have to let a greater person go first there. Gemara says no. Rabbi Yochanan meant a doorway, meaning a place fitting for a mezuzah, any doorway, as opposed to out in the open. Out in the open, you shouldn't let somebody go first. Only going through a door does this halacha apply. The Gemara now quotes a number of statements and incidents to give us the halachos of precedence throughout the process of washing, making a maitzi, and the meal. First, we will discuss the bracha. So the person who is opening the challah says the bracha, and the Gemara says that he should not cutting the bread until everybody has answered amen. He shouldn't start to cut until everybody's finished saying the amen. The Gemara says this halacha we see from an incident that happened. Rabbi Bar Barchana was marrying off his son to the daughter of Reb Shmuel Bar of Katina, and he sat down before the wedding and he taught him the halachas of a suda because the chasan, the groom, is the one who opens the bread. So he taught him this halacha. So the Gemara says that Rav Chizda said it's not exactly right. He doesn't have to wait till everybody finishes saying amen. He has to wait until the majority of people are saying amen. Rambam Bar Chama challenged him. Is that true? Why should you wait for the majority? You should wait for everybody. You don't want to chop off the end of the amen. You don't want to chop off the end of the amen for anybody. The Gemara answers, no, the people who are saying an extra long amen, that's their problem. It's not correct to say an extra long amen. Now, okay, so that's how he slices the bread. Then the Gemara quotes Rav Yehuda Breder Shmuel Bar Shilas, who says that nobody else is allowed to take a slice of bread first. The one who opens the bread is the one who actually takes the first slice. And the Gemara says that Rav Safra reviewed this language again and again. The wording was, nobody has a right to taste until the opener tastes. So Rav Safra he said, the word was taste. The word was taste. The Gemara says, what was he reviewing? There's a halacha that a student should say things over in the exact words that his Rebbe did. So that's what he reviewed, the exact phraseology a number of times. Now, once that happens, the Gemara quotes a brisa that says that the boitzeya, the one who opened the challah, is the one who takes first from the rest of the suda. What about other people? Do they have to wait for each other? So the Gemara says if you have two people eating together, they should wait for each other. Shouldn't eat one before the other during the meal. If you have three people, they don't need to wait for each other. Everybody could begin eating whenever it is his turn. Okay, having referred to waiting for the amen to be complete, the Gemara now quotes a brisa which discusses the proper way of saying amen. The brisa says there are three types of amen you should not say. You should not say an amen chatufa, which means a grabbed amen. You should not say an amen ketufa, a picked off amen. And you should not say an amen yisayma, which is an orphaned amen. There's some discussion amongst the achronim what these things are. Rashi seems to learn that yisayma means that it's just an amen, you didn't hear the bracha. The others say that that's what ketufa is. Rashi says that chatufa means that you kind of mushed up the alf, you just said main without saying the alf clearly. And chatufa means that, and ketufa means that you left off the nun, you just said amay without clearly saying the nun. Others say that it means that you jumped to say Amen before the bracha was completed. Others, the third shot here, that ketufa means that the Amen was split in half. He didn't say it in one flow. Either way, these are various different ways of saying the Amen incorrectly. The Brachos says you shouldn't. And then the Gemara says, and Ben Azza used to say that anybody who does any of these things will have his life cut short. Why? Because somebody who says in Amen Yisayma, an orphan Amen, his children will become Yisayim. Somebody says Chatufa, a grabbed Amen, so his life will be grabbed up quickly. Somebody who says Ketufa, a picked off, his life will be picked off as well. What if somebody says Amen correctly and slowly and clearly? His life and his days, his years will be extended. And the Gemara quotes another halacha of Seudah from another incident. This is about when can you join with an ongoing meal to be able to be counted towards the zimun. So Gemara quotes Rav Simi Bar Chia, he joined a meal with Rav and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel were sitting together, and Rav Simi Bar Chia joined, and he was eating fast. So Rav said, "What are you eating fast? You want to be able to catch up to us so you could be involved, you would be the third for the zimun, you want to join for the zimun, you can't, since we finished eating already, and we're not eating at the same time, we stopped before you started, so you wouldn't be able to join the zimun no matter how fast you eat." The Gemara says that Shmuel said, "You're right. If we finished eating, you're right. But did we really finish? Let's say somebody would bring out your favorite food now. Rav enjoyed small chickens, and Shmuel enjoyed a type of mushroom that he ate after the meal. So if somebody would bring that out now, wouldn't we eat it? We would. So our meal's not really over. We haven't fully ended it. We're sitting here. It's still considered to be part of the Suda, even though we're not actually eating. Okay, now the next halacha is when we said that you honor the greatest person there with leading the benching, who is that? The greatest person at the meal or the greatest person to arrive even if he wasn't at the meal? So the Gemara quotes an incident. The Talmidim of Rav were sitting together at a Suda, and Rav Acha came in. So somebody said, "Oh, here comes Rav Acha, he's a great man. He should be the one to lead the benching." So they said to him, "What do you think? It's not the greatest person who leads the benching, it's the main person of the meal who leads the benching. He wasn't here for the meal, he doesn't get to lead the benching." And the Gemara concludes that that is not the halacha. The halacha is that the greatest person present leads the benching, even if he was not there for the entire meal, he just came at the end. The Gemara now returns to the Mishnah to discuss it at length. The Gemara now will work through all the steps in the Mishnah where the Mishnah listed off the various different types of food that one could be eating that would or would not be allowed to join the Zimun. There were a number of things on the list. There was a list of things that one is allowed to eat to join the Zimun, and a list of things that if one ate that he's not allowed to. And the general rule was if he ate something he's permitted to eat, he can join the Zimun. If he ate something he's forbidden to eat, he cannot join the Zimun. So the Gemara is going to ask, each thing on the list is pashut, it's obvious that it's either permitted or it's forbidden, and the Gemara will work through each step and explain why it's not obvious that the forbidden ones are forbidden and why it's not obvious that the permitted ones are permitted. So let's work through the list slowly. So the first one is demai. Demai is on the list. So the Gemara says that demai is permitted. So first the Gemara says that's not true. That's not obvious. That's not true. Demai, a regular person is not allowed to eat demai. Demai is food that was bought from an amar, somebody who doesn't know halacha, and he may not have taken Meiser off, so Midrabanan is forbidden to eat. So how could you say that he's allowed to join the Zimun? The Gemara answers, because the halacha is that you're allowed to give demai to a poor person, and you're allowed to give demai to soldiers that are quartered in your house by the king. There's a brisa that says, there's a Mishnah that says that, and Rabbi Shammai argues, the Gemara quotes that, but you're allowed to give it to a poor. Therefore, anybody could really be permitted to eat it, because if you just be mafkir all his money, he'd be poor. Since technically a person could make himself permitted to eat demai, therefore it's considered that he has eaten something that he's allowed to eat, even if he didn't make himself into a poor person, and you're allowed to join him to the zimun. Okay, next on the list was Meiser Rishon, that a truma taken off. Okay, so the Gemara asks, well, very funny, what's the chiddush? If a truma taken off, it's done right. What's the problem? So in order to understand this, we have to understand the order of separating. It works as follows. When a Jew has a field and he grows grain, so the pasuk says, Reishis de gancha, your first grain you give to the kayin. You give him what's called truma gedayla. Next, after that, about 2% is removed. The next thing you do is you take off 10%, you give that to the Levi, that's called Meiser. Then the Levi from his meiser has to take off 10% of that and give that to the kohen, and that's called trumas meiser. So the Gemara says we're not talking about here where this food that he ate had truma and meiser taken off. We're talking about where it had meiser and trumas meiser taken off. What happened was that the Levi jumped and he went to the Yisrael's field while it was still in stalks. It wasn't even threshed yet, and he took his meiser right then and there. Truma Gedolah was never taken. The part that the Yisrael is supposed to give to the Kohen was never taken. The Levi took his meiser, and then the Levi took from his meiser and he gave his trumas meiser to the Kohen. But the first Truma Gedolah was never given. So the Gemara says the Levi is not obligated to give that, and even though it wasn't taken off, it's still permitted, and the Chiddush is that it's permitted, and therefore you're allowed to include this food in Zimun. Now, the Gemara says that's Rabbi Abba's opinion. How does he know it? He says if you read the psukim carefully, that's what it says. Hashem tells the Levi, you should take off of your meiser that you received, you should take off truma. Meiser min meiser, you should take 1/10 of the 10th that you received. But it doesn't say to take off truma gedolah and meiser. So if truma gedolah wasn't taken, you don't have to take it off. Leviim don't have to take that off. So now Rav Papa said to Abaye, 1 second, if this is true, so why does it have to be that the Levi went while it was still in stalks? Even if it was already threshed and it was in the grain floor, let's say, so he could, if the Levi took meiser, his meiser from there before truma gedolah was taken off, he should still not have to give truma gedolah. The pasuk says that. So Abaye says no, because there's a different pasuk. There's a different one that says as follows. It says mikol masor seichem torimu, from all your meiser you have to take off your truma. That's an extra step there that says that the Levi does have to give. So the Gemara says I don't understand you. You have one pasuk that tells me the Levi does not have to give truma gedolah from his meiser if it wasn't removed before, and you have one that says that he does have to. So how do you know which one's which? How do you know that it's from stalks and not from grain? The Gemara says very simple. Once it's threshed, it's called grain now, and the pasuk that says you have to give the kohen says reishes the guncha, you have to give from grain. It's not kohen stuff until it's in the grain state. Therefore, once it's threshed, it's grain state. Now, even the Levi has to give the truma gedolah to the kohen. However, before that, we apply the other pasuk, which says Levi doesn't have to give it because it was never grain, and it was never really obligated to go to the kohen in the first place. Okay. Next thing on the list was if you had something which was meiser sheni or hektish, it was special meiser for the poor, or it was hukdash, it was given to the Beis HaMikdash, and it was redeemed from those two sources, so that's also okay to eat. So the Gemara says, what's a chiddush over here? If it was redeemed, it's fine. The Gemara says it was redeemed, but the 5th wasn't added. The halacha is that if an owner is makdish some of his property, and then he redeems it back from the Beis HaMikdash, he can't just give its value, he has to give its value plus a 5th. So here we are taught that 5th is not ma'agiv. It does not restrict it. It's not forbidden to eat it before you give the 5th. You have to give the 5th. If you didn't give the 5th, you're still allowed to eat it. Next thing on the list was the waiter. If the waiter ate a concise, then he's allowed to join the zimun. The Gemara says, what's the chiddush? Chiddush is you may have thought that the waiter doesn't count because he's in and out. He's not really set part of the meal. Next thing on the list was a kusi. Kusi is a group that had a questionable conversion, and they keep some of the mitzvahs, the ones that are explicit in the Torah. They don't keep other mitzvahs. So the Gemara says, how could you say that you're allowed to count a kusi towards a zimun? The halacha is, the Brachos says, you're not even allowed to count an am ha'aretz, somebody who's fully religious, but he's unlearned. You're not allowed to count him as a zimun. So kusi for sure not. So the Gemara offers two answers. Abaye says we're talking about a kusi who's a Talmud Chacham. He's a very learned man. He's not an Amaretz. He's not worse than an Amaretz. He may not be clearly Jewish and may not keep all the mitzvahs, but the faultiness of being an Amaretz he doesn't have. Rava says no. I'll even tell you we're talking about a kusi who's a regular, but he's still not worse than an Amaretz, because it's not clear how we define an Amaretz, and according to the Rabbanon's way of defining an Amaretz, kusi doesn't qualify as an Amaretz. What are the different ways of defining an Amaretz? So the Gemara quotes, according to Rabbi Meir, an Amaretz is defined as somebody who does not eat his chulin b'tahara, does not keep the laws of tumah v'tahara on his regular bread on the level of hektish. Okay, Talmid Chachamim always did that. Amaratzim did not do that. Okay, the Chachamim say Amaretz is somebody who doesn't take meiser from his fruits in the proper manner. Okay, so now, the Kusim took Meiser in the proper manner. They were very into the mitzvah of Meiser. They took it the right way. So therefore, according to the Rabbanan, a Kusi is not an Amaretz. He's on a level higher than an Amaretz in this respect, and therefore, even though you can't count an Amaretz to Zimun, you could count a Kusi. And the Gemara notes that in any mitzvah that the Kusim decided they're keeping, they keep it even better than many Jews. Now, once we're on the subject, the Gemara quotes a Brisa, which lists all the various different ways of defining an Am Haaretz, unlearned Jew. So, the Gemara quotes as follows. Rabbi Eliezer says it's somebody who doesn't say Shema in the morning and Shema in the evening. Rabbi Shua says it's somebody who doesn't put on tefillin correctly. Ben Azai says it's somebody who doesn't have tzitzis on his four-cornered clothing. Rabbi Nassim says somebody who doesn't have a mezuzah on his door. Rabbi Nassim Bar Yosef says anybody who has children but does not raise them in learning Torah. They send them to other things. And then the Gemara quotes Acherim, which is usually Rabbi Meir, but here it's not Rabbi Meir because we saw Rabbi Meir defined it differently. Acherim say even somebody who learned and studied and reviewed, but if he did not sit with Talmidei Chachamim and learn from them specifically, that does not make him a Talmid Chacham. He still remains an Am Haaretz, an unlearned individual. Now, Rashi explains Shimish Talmidei Chachamim, serving Talmidei Chachamim, as learning Gemara, learning the Svaras and the reasonings behind all the halachos. Now, the Gemara says, what's the halacha? Rav Huna says the halacha is like a cherem, that anybody who learned as much as he wants, but if he did not serve Talmidei Chachamim to learn from them, he remains an Am Haaretz. The Gemara quotes an incident that Rami Bar Chama never made a zimun together with Rav Menashe bar Tachlifa. Now he was no fool. He knew Sifra and Sifri and he knew halacha. Well, sure enough, soon afterwards, Rav Bar Chama passed away. Rava said the reason why he passed away is because of this insult, because he did not call Rav Menashe bar Tachlifa. He did not include him in a zimun. So the Gemara says, well, what do you mean? But he wasn't Shimish Talmidei Chachamim, and the Brisa said, at least according to Acherim, if you're not Mishamish Talmidei Chachamim, you're an Am Haaretz, and Am Haaretz we don't count to zimun. So Rami Bar Chama was right. So the Gemara says it's not correct. Really, Rav Menashe bar Tachlifa did serve Talmidei Chachamim. He did learn Gemara with them. Rami Bar Chama didn't research him properly, and therefore he made a mistake. Another version of this mistake that Rami Bar Chama made was that although, according to this version, Rav Menashe bar Tachlifa did not serve Talmidei Chachamim, he did not learn with them, he did learn Gemara, but he did learn the bottom line. He did learn the conclusions of all the Gemara sugyas, and he said it over again. And somebody who does that is considered to be a Talmid Chacham, is not considered to be an Am Haaretz. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the list. The list, now we're up to the part of the list of somebody who ate something forbidden that he's not allowed to eat. So first on the list is somebody who ate tevel, which is grain that did not have truma or meiser taken off. The Gemara says that's obvious, for sure. That's also the Gemara says no, because it's referring to where it's only chayiv in truma midrabanan, because it grew in a flower pot without a hole. So the chiddush is that that's also called aser. The next is if somebody took meiser rishon where truma was not taken off. The Gemara says again, and that's obvious. The Gemara says no, it's the same story with the Levi who went early and he took from the granary before it was given to the Kohen, but here it's different. Here it's talking about where he took from the grain, the already threshed grain. And you may have thought, like with Papa's question to Abaya earlier, where he said, what's the difference? How come threshed grain, if the Levi takes before the Kohen received his like that, the Levi does have to give it? And the answer is no, he does have to give it because of Abaya's answer, where Abaya says we have a drasha where it's considered to be grain, and therefore he is chayiv. Okay, next we said Meiser Sheni and Hektish, which was not redeemed. The Gemara says for sure, that's obvious. The Gemara says no, it's referring to where it was redeemed, but it wasn't redeemed correctly. The Meiser Sheni was redeemed with a coin that doesn't have a face on it. You're not supposed to do it that way. And the Hektish was redeemed with land. You're not supposed to use land to redeem it. You're supposed to use money to redeem it. So it was done wrong. Next is a waiter who ate an entire kazayas. The Gemara says that's also obvious. I'm sorry, that he ate less than a kazayas. The Gemara says that's also obvious. And my answer is yeah, you're right. We didn't need to say this. The only reason we said it was that it should be symmetrical. The first half of the Mishnah, which said that a waiter who ate a whole kazayas is mitzdarif. Next, we said that a guy doesn't count to the zimun. And where it says that's also obvious. And my answer is no. We're talking about a guy who was partially converted. He had a bris milah, but didn't go to the mikveh yet. And it's teaching us the halacha that Rabbi Yochanan said that somebody who does that is not considered to be Jewish yet. He's a guy, and therefore we cannot use him. Next thing we saw in the Mishnah was that a child does not count to the zimun. So the Gemara quotes an interesting thing. Rabbi Yossi says that a child, even a baby in the crib, counts. The Gemara says, what do you mean? The Mishnah said the opposite. The Gemara says, no. What Rabbi Yossi meant was that, like Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, he doesn't count to a zimun, but he does count to finish a minyan. So you should be able to say Eloheinu. No, Rabbi Shua ben Levi says further, even an Eved counts to be the 10th man in a minyan. The Gemara asks, well, what do you mean? There was a story that happened that Rabbi Eliezer freed his Eved in order to be able to make a minyan. He was the final one. So why did he free him? You just said that an Eved counts as the 10th man even if he isn't freed. The Gemara says, no, he had two Avadim. He freed one to make him the 9th man, and then the 10th one was his other Eved. How is he allowed to free his Eved? The halach is, Rabbi Yehuda says that somebody who frees his Eved violates a mitzvah. It says, La'elam behem tavaydu, they should serve you forever. He was allowed to because it was for the purpose of a mitzvah, in order to complete the minyan. The Gemara says, what do you mean, mitzvah? That's a mitzvah, baba avera. You did an avera to bring about a mitzvah. That's not much of a mitzvah. The Gemara says, no, it's a mitzvah for an entire congregation that you're allowed to do. The Gemara says a person should always be careful that he should get up early and come to shul. He should be one of the first 10 in shul, because then he gets the reward of all the other people who come after him. The Gemara says he gets their reward? No, he gets equal to their reward, a share equal to their reward. Now Rav Huna says the following halacha. Rav Huna says the 10th man could be the Aron. The Gemara says Aron's not a man. The Gemara says when it's a situation where you can't easily count how many people there are, such as according to one version that they're all clustered together and you can't see how many there are, or they're all spread out all over the place and you can't count them easily. In those situations you can count the Aron as the 10th man. And Rabbi Nachman says you can count Shabbos as the 10th man. Rabbi Ami says. So Rabbi Nachman said to him, you count Shabbos as the 10th man. Shabbos is not a man. The Gemara says, okay, you're right, that's not really what he said. He said if you have two Talmidei Chachamim that sharpen each other, they learn together, you can count them as 3. You can count them as an extra man. The Gemara says that Rav Chizda pointed at himself and says, yeah, me and Rav Sheshes and I are a good example of this. Sheshes also pointed at himself and said, yeah, Rav Chizda and I are a good example of this. Okay, now the Gemara discusses what is the proper age at which a katan is considered to be a grown man, and you can count him to the minyan. So generally there are 2 signs of being a grown up: that a boy is 13 years old, and that he has 2 hairs growing in a mature place. So the Gemara says that Rav Yochanan said it's enough if he has the hairs. It doesn't have to actually be 13 years old. And the Gemara says, I'll prove to you from the following brisa. The brisa says, a katan is only allowed to join the minyan if he has the proper amount of hairs, otherwise not. And the Gemara says, and we don't check out. The Gemara says, you don't check out. Well, that's a contradiction. First you have to have, he has to have hairs, then you said you're not going to check it out. The Gemara says, it means that in a situation where he has hairs, you don't have to check further to see if he has years. Hairs is enough without years.